Welcome to your weekly astrology overview and Zodiac forecast for week beginning the 5th of November. I'm going to share with you some of the standout themes of the week, then on screen the event chart. Right at the beginning, on Monday, that provides an influential backdrop for the whole 7 days. I'll then go through each of the 12 Zodiac signs, from Aries through to Pisces, which you can relate to in terms of your ascendant, sun or the moon. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell, and a very warm welcome. All your views, interactions, comments and likes are truly appreciated. We're going to have this week two Cazimis. The first Venus, the second Mars. What is a Cazimi? Well, it's not rare, but they're not very common, because if we think about it, it's when the sun exactly applies in unison to another planet, and not all planets are following the course of the sun, and therefore this double conjunction this week in the sign of Capricorn, which is very much to do with tradition, authority, structures, is really intriguing. But we also have on the other side of the heavens Jupiter, the planet of philosophy, education, knowledge, international affairs, in a direct opposition to that duo and also the sun, and that can create some tensions. As the week goes on, however, we have on Saturday a quarter moon in the diplomatic sign of Libra. What's the implications of that? I'm going to share with you now on screen the event chart at the start of the week. But just to say, if you've yet to order your personal forecast for the next 12 months based on your unique birth data, no two charts are the same, I've cut the price specially down to 50% off. You'll also get your life roadmap report and your free gift of your general love Chinese and Indian written zodiac forecast. Please just apply Astro26 at the checkout to get that 50% off. So on the screen you can see we have a cluster of energy in the sign of Capricorn, and they're very, very close together. That's known as a stellium, and they're also joined now by Mercury. Now Mercury has started to shrug off the rather confusing energies of Neptune in a right angle and the restrictive vibe of Saturn before that. So Mercury can start to be a bit more businesslike, but we also need to be conscious of the position of the moon, the other luminary. And you can see that's in Leo, the proud Leo, but it is emerging from a direct opposition to Pluto. So there could be some tensions as this week begins. If someone has wanted to be a little bit more dominating, that could come up from that moon opposite Pluto position. I'm now going to go through each of those influences in greater detail. What we're seeing happen in Venezuela, but also in Iran, I think is very much to do with Mars being in opposition to the moon, the full moon of last week. If we think about it, the moon is very much to do with emotion, but the Cancerian energy in mundane astrology can be to do with where we live, the actual state that we occupy. And Mars can be very dominating, but in two different ways. So Venezuelan energy is where the muscle and might of a big state, the United States of America, use their military power in order to impose their will on the energies of the president there. And in Iran we've got an opposite kind of echo, because there it's the people who are unhappy with having been dominated for a very long time. So the astrology is really speaking to what's going on in the world at the present time. And it's true to say the two Cazimis, if you're someone with a clear vision of what you want to achieve in terms of goals and ambitions, can certainly, with the thrust of Mars, the assertion of Mars, which is exalted in Capricorn, and the diplomacy of Venus, can be very helpful if we have that clarity. And towards the end of the week, however, that quarter moon just suggests we could encounter someone However much we're diplomatic towards them, whether it's a line manager, a colleague, a parent, they may be a little bit unyielding in terms of listening to what we want as individuals. I'm now going to go through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces to give you a flavour of what you can expect this week, and you can relate to these in terms of your ascendant, sun or the moon. Aries, your week commencing the 5th of November is seeing your ruler Mars continuing its dominant journey in the sign of Capricorn, which will go on through to the 23rd of January. But its exact conjunction with the Sun on Thursday comes after it's exactly conjoined with Venus on Wednesday. Now Venus itself is in the conjunction, the cazimi, with the Sun on Tuesday, and all of these energies, if you're very clear about your direction of travel, especially around a big golden prize you want to seize, can definitely be helpful. But one of the things that I think is important is to realise that last week's full moon is still providing a backdrop into this week, and because your ruler Mars was in an opposition to the moon in Cancer, it's really important that you don't try too hard. Trust the process, Aries. I think that's really important for you, because people are going to be very aware of the energetic vibe that you're emitting. And to be honest, in terms of your attractiveness, there's never been a time, I feel, where you can strut your stuff as confidently as this, and people will be very conscious of that, and therefore your profile will naturally rise. So you don't have to be too much of in a hurry to reach that prize. Let the process unfold. But by the end of the week, the quarter moon does suggest it could be a relationship issue where there is a shift in who is having the final say. If you've been with someone a long time, even known a friend a long time, some subtle changes can be going on at the moment, particularly if you see yourself as being quite an easygoing ram. You might want to be a little bit clearer about what you're wanting from situations, and the other person could be a bit resistant to that, and that could create some tensions, and that could show up towards the end of this week. But as long as you remember that might doesn't equal right, be clear about what you want, use your thrust, your determination and your sense of purpose to go for what you want, but just know that you've got all the qualities within you, and that will radiate out to others without you having to force it. But just to say, if you've yet to order your personal forecast for the next 12 months based on your unique birth data, no two charts are the same, I've cut the price specially down to 50% off. You'll also get your life roadmap report and your free gift of your general love Chinese and Indian written zodiac forecast. Please just apply Astro26 at the checkout to get that 50% off. Taurus, your week commencing the 5th of January is going to see on Tuesday your ruler Venus come into an exact alliance with the Sun. Whatever it is that's really enthusing you at the moment, your passion for that and your personality power are going to be amped up exponentially throughout this week. So whether you are talking about doing something that really shakes up your world, brings in a sense of change, excitement, variety and spontaneity, that combination together with Venus's combination with Mars on Wednesday, if you are chatting to someone, perhaps someone from a different background to you, they're going to find you very appealing indeed. But then Mars comes into the conjunction with the Sun, a cazimi on Thursday. And if you have been feeling very penned in, perhaps even frustrated, the desire to assert a need for your independence can be extremely strong. So if you are or have been in a relationship which is not making you completely happy, I think it's possible that towards the end of this week, your main aim may, at the very least, be to liberate yourself, to have a bit more time to think about what you exactly want. Now, in the most extreme case, that could be breaking away altogether. But just be aware there's going to be some intense discussions this week. And you may encounter someone, perhaps online, in a business meeting, perhaps even a friend, who just sees things very differently to you. And whilst it may be enjoyable to a degree to have a little bit of an intellectual tussle, if you are talking about something that's really very important to you, you do need to decide whether it's really worth getting too caught up in what could become somewhat fractious. By the end of the week, the thing to remember with the quarter moon is that the obligations you have could weigh in a little bit on that desire to have a bit more space, independent and freedom. And if you agree to do something when really want to do your own thing, the net result in the week following this one could be a sense of resentment. So it will be important to maintain your boundaries towards the end of this week. But just to say, if you've yet to order your personal forecast for the next 12 months based on your unique birth data, no two charts are the same, I've cut the price specially down to 50% off. You'll also get your life roadmap report and your free gift of your general love Chinese and Indian written zodiac forecast. Please just apply Astro26 at the checkout to get that 50% off. From Gemini, your week commencing the 5th of January forecast. You have a reputation for logic, and your ruler Mercury is now moving away from a sluggish right angle to Neptune, which could have proved confusing, but also escaping the clutches of Saturn too. So if you need to analyse things, Mercury will certainly give you a lot of an extra capacity in this regard right through to the 20th of January. But it's the collective beyond Mercury in Capricorn of Venus, Mars and the Sun. They're all coming together this week in such a powerful way. On Tuesday, it's Venus combining with the Sun, a cazimi. Wednesday, Venus and Mars. Thursday, Mars and the Sun. And that can introduce a degree of compulsion to your moves. For example, if there is someone in your orbit that you're finding very attractive, it may be very difficult to resist trying to get closer to them. But then again, because Jupiter in the second half of this week in your sector of everyday money could make you a little bit impulsive about what you spend. But that could be where there can be some tensions that start to develop. In a close ongoing relationship, if your approach to resources is different to your partner, that could lead to a stubborn standoff. At the end of this week, however, the quarter moon is in your sister air sign of Libra, which can be very romantic, but it can, the fifth house, also be about speculation. If you are thinking about doing something around marshalling your long-term resources, I wouldn't be too hasty. And that's where Mars in particular being opposite Jupiter does require a little bit of care, because that need for something can be just so amplified in such a way that it makes it more difficult for your normal detachment to have the same impact. And that's where you could find yourself caught up in something that maybe in the course of time might not seem such a smart thing to have done. But just to say, if you've yet to order your personal forecast for the next 12 months based on your unique birth data, no two charts are the same, I've cut the price specially down to 50% off. You'll also get your life roadmap report and your free gift of your general love Chinese and Indian written zodiac forecast. Please just apply Astro26 at the checkout to get that 50% off. For Cancer, your week commencing the 5th of January forecast begins with the energy of last week's full moon still pulsating around the heavens and reminding you of the need to stay very much in touch with your feelings. Now that's something you're very attuned to ordinarily, but there's so much potential at the moment. You could find romantically, for example, if you're single, there's more than one person who's trying to win your approval. Then again, in an existing relationship, you may find yourself, because of Mars being opposite the moon last week, you want to be a bit firmer about your boundaries. Why not? And this week, Venus connects with the Sun beautifully in a cazimi on Tuesday, which can help you to be very diplomatic, but also very harmonizing. Then Venus and Mars connect on Wednesday in a way which can give you enormous personal attractiveness. But on Thursday, that's where you could find yourself feeling a little bit firmer as the Sun combines with Mars in the cazimi, but then all three of those players come into a direct opposition with Jupiter in your zodiac sign, which is in a retrograde. Although Jupiter has a reputation for being very much to do with fortune, expansion and knowledge, it can also be about our philosophies. And in a retrograde, there may be something that you're feeling very, very strongly about, and you may find yourself wanting to assert that idea powerfully towards the end of this week in perhaps a little bit of an uncharacteristic way, because generally there is a part of you that might want to step back from a direct confrontation. You may want to step into it at the end of this week. And the quarter moon, which occurs on Saturday in the most tender part of your scope, and a sign which is very much to do with the need for equilibrium, Libra, could just surprise you a little bit if someone does push back just as you're being firmer. So there's a bit of a juggle still going on between getting what you want, but also being in touch with how you feel, and yet there still can be some very attractive options, whether it's to network, whether it's to collaborate, or it is in a romantic context too. But just to say, if you've yet to order your personal forecast for the next 12 months based on your unique birth data, no two charts are the same, I've cut the price specially down to 50% off. You'll also get your life roadmap report and your free gift of your general love Chinese and Indian written zodiac forecast. Please just apply Astro26 at the checkout to get that 50% off. So your week beginning the 5th of January begins with the moon in your zodiac sign, but coming out of a direct confrontation with Pluto. Pluto is very much about power. The moon in your zodiac sign can be about pride. There may be a little bit of a tussle therefore at the very start of this week, and it could be because you feel that someone hasn't necessarily been completely sincere with you. Maybe there's been not some direct criticism, but maybe a hint that someone's not entirely satisfied with your performance, and it may be to do with work. Just at a time when you're probably trying to refine your approach and be as productive as possible because of the cluster of energy in Capricorn, which for you is house 6. Don't be too deflected. Jupiter, which is also in your 12th house, is also going to run into that celestial traffic in Capricorn in a direct opposition later this week. But what Jupiter's been really nudging you towards since May 2025 is to become much more conscious of the spiritual healing and psychological dimension of life, and to be okay with it. Because I feel as a Leo, being respected is important. Being liked is rather nice, but being admired is optimum. But actually being respected for all of us is number one. So do be aware, particularly with the fallout from last week's full moon, that there could be someone who's just poised to critique what you're doing, but they may not necessarily be doing it in a very fair way. And I feel as much as you could feel a bit feisty at the start of the week, by the end of the week, if you put too much oxygen into this particular drama, it won't actually necessarily be to your advantage. By the end of the week, the quarter moon in Libra suggests you could have some choices for however much you want to shrug off the vibes that they may be giving out and demonstrate just how efficient you can be. No one, none of us, can pack in more than is humanely possible in any given time. So you will need to set yourself a little bit of an achievable schedule towards the end of this week. Not try to be too virtuous, because it could lead you to feel rather stressed out. And one of the things you can still consider very strongly is making small but very important changes. Anything to do with what you eat, drink, cook, the exercise you get, the amount of sleep you get, all these things are very much in the mix this week and can still be very constructive for you. But just to say, if you've yet to order your personal forecast for the next 12 months based on your unique birth data, no two charts are the same, I've cut the price specially down to 50% off. You'll also get your life roadmap report and your free gift of your general love Chinese and Indian written zodiac forecast. Please just apply Astro26 at the checkout to get that 50% off. Go, your week beginning the 5th of January forecast sees your ruler Mercury shake off the enervating and rather draining vibe of Neptune, which is really strongly to the fore as Mercury came to the end of its journey in Sagittarius but moved into the most bubbly part of your chart. Now, the three players you do have in that bubbly chart of Venus, Mars and the Sun are all going to be collaborating spectacularly well this week. But there is a little bit of a potential gotcha, because on the other side of the heavens is the abundant energies of Jupiter. Now, Jupiter opposite Venus could give you a larger than life sense. So if you are wanting to dazzle someone new this week, particularly in a social situation, there's every chance you can. But the downside of Jupiter in its opposition with the Sun, but most of all with Mars in the second half of this week, is that you could overpromise in a situation where you just don't need to do that. So if there is someone you're really attracted to, or if there is an idea you have that you want to demonstrate your flair and artistry around, it's important to let things just evolve, because your nature is to be very conscious of the details, how you go about things in a very patient, applied way. If you stick to that, the planets will just automatically animate what you do. But if you try to take a giant step forwards in a situation which would be better off with taking just steady forward steps, that could spoil a very promising prospect. However, towards the end of this week, the quarter moon which occurs, and it is in your second house, may see you tempted to splash the cash, perhaps in terms of being a bit more speculative if you enjoy a flutter. But there could also be someone close to you who does ask you for some financial assistance. Now, if this has become somewhat of a pattern, you could find yourself reminding them that you're not their bank, that they need to take responsibility for what they're doing. But if there is someone that's really catching your imagination, and that's really possible, I really wouldn't do anything like a grand gesture. Just let your personality power, which is lit up at the moment, naturally, charismatically engage with life, with other people, and that will provide its own outcome for you. But just to say, if you've yet to order your personal forecast for the next 12 months based on your unique birth data, no two charts are the same, I've cut the price specially down to 50% off. You'll also get your life roadmap report and your free gift of your general love Chinese and Indian written zodiac forecast. Please just apply Astro26 at the checkout to get that 50% off. Libra, your week beginning the 5th of January forecast continues to see a cluster of energy in the part of your scope that's very much to do with home, family, emotion. In terms of the physical domain, the combination of the Sun and your ruler Venus on Tuesday can give you an added appreciation of the quality of home furnishings. So if you're looking at the sales, you may want to get yourself something new which helps to add a sense of comfort and style. But it could easily come from redecorating, planning some physical changes, actually moving. And if that's part of the equation, Venus's conjunction with Mars on Wednesday can give you more urgency. But then the Sun combines with Mars on Thursday. If you are feeling that someone around you is not quite joining in, there could be a degree of frustration, however, that starts to amp up towards the end of this week. But whatever it is you're trying to achieve, whether it is about beautifying your abode, moving all together, expanding the family, or it is about perhaps considering a move that might see you have more space, or perhaps move to somewhere that's more to your taste. The opposition of Jupiter to those three players at the end of this week just suggests you really need to factor in what would happen if your circumstances would change. If you are thinking about a higher mortgage, a higher rental, would you still be able to service that? Because when Jupiter and Mars particularly get into an opposition, our desire for something can be heightened, but also our urgency to get it quickly. Now, by the end of the week on Saturday, the quarter moon in your zodiac sign is intriguing, because as much as all that emotional energy is around you with the collective in Capricorn, and we're still surfing the emotion of last week's full moon in Cancer, very much to do with your feelings being close to the surface. What I feel that quarter moon is suggesting is, as much as there is that emotional dimension, there's also that more detached, logical side of your nature, which can be more about keeping things in balance. So it's important that you don't get pulled towards something from an immediate need, rather than understanding what that need might be about. And that quarter moon therefore could be very valuable if you are feeling compelled, and there is a sense of urgency, just to slow things down a little bit, but most of all hear where other people are coming from as well, particularly if it is a group decision about moving or changing things, and that will just help you to bring things back into that little bit more of a detached air-like energy. But just to say, if you've yet to order your personal forecast for the next 12 months based on your unique birth data, no two charts are the same, I've cut the price specially down to 50% off. You'll also get your life roadmap report and your free gift of your general love Chinese and Indian written zodiac forecast. Please just apply Astro26 at the checkout to get that 50% off. Scorpio, your week commencing the 5th of January forecast has a real sense of excitement around it. Now, your ruler Mars traditionally is very much in the mix, but at the very start of the week it's your modern ruler Pluto that's also featuring in an opposition with the moon. And the moon's going to be very high in the sky on Monday, and whatever you're feeling, it's going to be hard to disguise it. So as much as there is a beautiful combination of the Sun and Venus on Tuesday, of Venus and Mars coming together fantastically well on Wednesday, the Sun and Mars in a cazimi on Thursday, that's all good stuff. But if you're discussing something, I feel as you come into this week, the emotional part of the situation, and perhaps even a little bit of pride with the moon in Leo, and for a very private sign like you, maybe finding it more difficult to disguise the emotion in what you're thinking or expressing, just suggests the conversations you have could actually be a little bit more charged, intense, and not just be about ideas. But if you're someone who's more settled in your emotional world or around your relationships, and you are feeling really excited about something you're working on, your desire to tell people about it, be enthusiastic, be persuasive, is absolutely fantastic this week. Just right at the end of the week, if you are thinking about a new mode of transport or a travel plan, you could find yourself caught up in trying to rush something, and I don't feel that will be to your benefit. And that's because Jupiter comes into an opposition with the trio of Venus, Mars and the Sun. But also on Saturday there's a very tender quarter moon for you. So as much as there's those exchanges of ideas, that sense of excitement, you may want to move around more, you may be more physically active, you're absolutely bubbling and buzzy right at the end of the week, suddenly something can come up or out that actually really takes on a life force of its own. Maybe something you read on social media, someone shares something that you feel is a bit indelicate, insensitive, excluding. We've all been there, particularly with, you know what I'm talking about. It begins with an F and a B. So just be aware towards the end of the week, despite all that very vervy, vibrant, zesty energy, you might find yourself suddenly feeling a little more vulnerable. But just to say, if you've yet to order your personal forecast for the next 12 months based on your unique birth data, no two charts are the same, I've cut the price specially down to 50% off. You'll also get your life roadmap report and your free gift of your general love Chinese and Indian written zodiac forecast. Please just apply Astro26 at the checkout to get that 50% off. Sagittarius, your week commencing the 5th of January forecast begins with the moon in Leo in an opposition with Pluto, the planet of power, in your 3rd house of conversation in Aquarius. As you come into the week, therefore, there may be some dialogue, some thinking about resources, perhaps about your values, perhaps about a possession, maybe even about money. Now, if you're wanting to use your money shrewdly, the combination of energies in the first half of this week are absolutely fantastic. But it's a story that can be threaded right throughout 2026. If money comes in and you don't splash it out straight away, you can build up a surplus which gives you a greater sense of security. But if you can afford it, you may also give yourself permission to have a little bit of a luxurious treat on Tuesday, as Venus is in a cazimi with the Sun in your 2nd house. But then Venus and Mars are in a conjunction on Wednesday. If you're lucky enough to be in a close relationship, whether it's sharing a lovely meal, a nice drink, or perhaps a sensual moment, that can certainly ignite a greater sense of connection between you. But on Thursday, the Sun's conjunction with Mars, a cazimi again, well, that gives a greater sense of urgency. But then all three of those players come into a direct opposition with your abundant ruler of Jupiter. But that continues to rewind through to the 11th of March. It's in the sign of Cancer, which is very much about emotion, but the emotion of long-term finances, the emotion of deep connection. And perhaps if there is a difference of opinion about resources in a close relationship, it could really get magnified towards the end of this week. Especially if you're wanting to be thrifty, a partner is wanting to be more free and easy. However, the quarter moon, which occurs on Saturday in the part of your chart to do with your friendships and your long-term plan, could show up where your values just don't align. And that could be something that gives you food for thought as this week draws to a close. One of the things I would say is there could be a desire to be a little bit more spontaneous towards the end of this week. And if there is a big ticket item that you've yearned for some while, it may be something that's very hard to resist. But with the knowledge of this forecast, I'm hoping you can see that year 2026 can, if you're canny, be a really constructive year for you in terms of money. But just to say, if you've yet to order your personal forecast for the next 12 months based on your unique birth data, no two charts are the same, I've cut the price specially down to 50% off. You'll also get your life roadmap report and your free gift of your general love Chinese and Indian written zodiac forecast. Please just apply Astro26 at the checkout to get that 50% off. Capricorn, your week beginning the 5th of January continues to see an energy which was beginning at the very start of this year, a cluster of energy in your sign, which is very rare, enhanced now by Mercury. But this week, the Sun's going to apply to Venus on Tuesday, amplifying the allure of Venus in a cazimi. And then on Wednesday, Venus and Mars come together. So we have the seductiveness of Venus, the coquettishness, be enhanced by the rugged energy of Mars. What a combination to draw goodness to you. And then on Thursday, it's the hustle bustle energy of Mars joined by the Sun. And all of that's giving you extra confidence to reset your personal profile. Now, whether that's through fashion, whether it's through your business ideas, whether it's through injecting more energy into ongoing strands that you're passionate about, the chances of gaining extra traction are really very strong. But if you are wanting to connect to someone in a more romantic dimension, none of these energies is going to harm your prospects. That doesn't necessarily mean you will meet someone, but I think you can feel much more attractive. And you could find that someone makes, or more than one person makes some really nice comments. I like your hair. It's a lovely item of clothing you've got on. And all of this extra confidence is very, very good for the soul. However, in the latter part of this week, Jupiter, which is in your sector of relating, in itself very positive, but is in a retrograde through to the 11th of March, well, that comes into an opposition with those three players, but in particular with Mars, may see you perhaps become a little bit too caught up in how you view things and find it a bit more difficult to tune into how other people see things. So there are always times when we have to take our drive and desire to achieve something so seriously that someone else may feel a bit pushed out and a bit neglected, perhaps even a bit jealous. But you know, those times are precious because we would never change anything if we always stayed with the status quo. So sometimes it is important to be disruptive, to look at ways in which we can change things up. But if we become a little bit too sure of ourselves, that's not such a good thing. And all of that can come to the surface if that does show up with the quarter moon in Libra on Saturday, when your emotions can be closer to the surface, and suddenly that part of you, which can be someone who upholds tradition, established ways of doing things, can seem out of kilter with what you want to do in terms of being very single-minded. So I think if you do want to hit the sales, get yourself some new clothes, give your personal presentation some kind of stylish makeover, very positive indeed. If you want to push forwards with drive and determination, you can do so and use lots of different skills to make progress. But just be aware that someone may see something a little different, and it's certainly not a good time to become overconfident towards the end of this week. But just to say, if you've yet to order your personal forecast for the next 12 months based on your unique birth data, no two charts are the same, I've cut the price specially down to 50% off. You'll also get your life roadmap report and your free gift of your general love Chinese and Indian written zodiac forecast. Please just apply Astro26 at the checkout to get that 50% off. Aquarius, your week commencing the 5th of January forecast continues to see a big tranche of energy located in the tender 12th house. The 12th house can be complex, particularly with Mars. What Mars does is have a tendency to churn up things that we're not conscious of in the 12th house. That can be to do with old injustices, where we've had losses, there's been endings that we didn't necessarily find easy, perhaps even things like road accidents. And we may have worked through those things and worked through them as best we can. And suddenly, because the 12th house and Mars can trigger our subconscious, our anger can come up, or our tears. It can be very tender, Mars, in this area. And yet this week, the Sun blesses Venus here, and also it blesses Mars. And what it's basically doing, the Sun, is urging you to give yourself permission to just work through any past event that just needs a little bit more attention. because if you can engage with this, it can be extremely positive. You can release it. And I firmly believe that we do hold emotions in our bodies. So if you do let go about something, or you reconsider an old romance that didn't work out, you may even hear from someone you used to be connected to, or an old flame could come to mind. But all of it's because you're processing and letting go of something that's quite delicate. And also because Mercury's in this part of your chart too, but has now shrugged off the enervating energy of Neptune, you can start to get more clarity about what you want to do later in January. Once Venus joins you on the 17th, the Sun and Mercury on the 20th, we have a Mercury cazimi on the 21st, Mars joins you on the 23rd, then we have a Sun Pluto cazimi. Lots of brilliant energy in the here and now will develop for you as the month goes on. But if you do find yourself not necessarily wanting to join in, accept an invitation, or just be with people that you trust very deeply, don't beat yourself up about it. This is a time of delicate change, of letting those emotions go. If you do find yourself going for some kind of therapeutic treatment, a spa day, that's very positive indeed. The more you work with the psychological part of your nature, the more you will boost your physical vitality. But by the end of this week, as Jupiter in Cancer in its retrograde goes face to face, particularly with Mars, if someone does criticize you, and it could be around your work, maybe there's a kind of hint that you could be more productive, that could be quite triggering. Try not to get caught up in that. There is a quarter moon which occurs on Saturday in Libra, and whatever you're feeling, the chances are it could be amplified. And whereas you would normally and can be very detached and just turn the other cheek, there may be something that could just get under your skin a little bit as the cosmic curtain comes down on the week. But don't give the other person the satisfaction of doing that to you. Just know that you are feeling a bit more tender. You may even feel all the way to vulnerable. Or if there is someone that you're involved with at the moment, you may want to keep it very much just between you and they for now. It could be hot, it could be passionate, but it could also be somewhat secret too. But just to say, if you've yet to order your personal forecast for the next 12 months based on your unique birth data, no two charts are the same, I've cut the price specially down to 50% off. You'll also get your life roadmap report and your free gift of your general love Chinese and Indian written zodiac forecast. Please just apply Astro26 at the checkout to get that 50% off. Pisces, your week commencing the 5th of January forecast has a little bit of a dichotomy threaded through it. At the very start of the week, you could find yourself feeling a bit on edge. The opposition between the moon in Leo and Pluto in your 12th house could trigger an insecurity, something you're unsure about. But as the week goes on, the potential to build positive dialogue or connections or network to others is actually really incredibly strong. If you're someone with a very clear vision of what you want from your long-term future, you could take a giant step forwards towards it this week. But the 11th house, where we have the cluster of energy in Capricorn, can also be about friendships. And the friendships you're really wanting this year are people that you can utterly trust, but also may share your values. Just having people that you get on well with at a certain level is probably not going to be enough. And because we do have a Venus cazimi Tuesday, maybe there's one particular friend at the moment that you're finding particularly inspiring. But then Venus and Mars come into a conjunction on Wednesday. Is that person someone you want to be intimate with? It could be a question that's asked. But then in an existing romantic relationship, the thing to bear in mind is the things you share in common. We can all focus on the things we find more difficult about partnerships, but do celebrate those things, those commonalities you have. But on Thursday, if there is something you're really wanting to go for that perhaps goes beyond the physical realm, it's more about what inspires you. The conjunction of the Sun and Mars, the cazimi there, can give you such a lot of determination to take a giant step towards that long-term goal. But just know your traditional ruler Jupiter's, continuing its retrograde through to the 11th of March, does go face to face with those cluster of energies in Capricorn towards the end of this week. And one of the things you don't want to do is, to use an old expression, try not to run before you can walk. So even if you've got a big plan, even if it is inspiring you, that part of your nature which can be almost idealistic or very spiritually idealistic, very Jupiterian, needs to in some ways have some guardrails, because as much as you may want to go for what really does excite you, don't get too much into the plan without carefully doing your research. But what can help you is the dry old energies of Mercury. Mercury rules the signs of Gemini, very much about quick communication, the messenger, the conversation, but also the earth sign of Virgo. Here it's very much about precision, going through the processes. And in Capricorn, Mercury can be actually very businesslike, and I think can help to balance some of the abundant and exuberant energies that are building towards the end of this week, which are a little bit potentially unrealistic. So Mercury can just help you to detach a little bit, just think very carefully about whether some of the ideas you've got work in lots of different ways. And if you really go through those ideas and discuss them, perhaps with a friend, or get some very good advice, that would be a very shrewd thing to do. Now, right at the end of the week, there is a quarter moon in Libra. If there is one friend around you who tends to be a little possessive or controlling, or maybe a little clingy, doesn't let you or doesn't want you to perhaps mix with different people, that's a relationship that could really irk in the following week. It doesn't mean to say that you want to fall out with that person, but I think the people who really are going to inspire you at the moment are those who share your values. And sometimes those values for a Piscean definitely go beyond the material sphere. But just to say, if you've yet to order your personal forecast for the next 12 months based on your unique birth data, no two charts are the same, I've cut the price specially down to 50% off. You'll also get your life roadmap report and your free gift of your general love Chinese and Indian written zodiac forecast. Please just apply Astro26 at the checkout to get that 50% off.